Hi, welcome. This will be a short video tutorial on how we at Barco have been doing our AutoCAD drawings for Auro, and I'm going to need a place to start, so I have a simple room here from our site survey packet and can use that as a basis for going through and drawing some things. We'll go over that packet real quickly too, just so that everyone has an idea of how things go together in an Auro configuration. And then I've also made some automated blocks and some standard annotations that I use, and we've got a couple speakers that I've got as action blocks, so we'll go through those real quick too and show everybody how we can put together an Auro room. So to begin, we will zoom in here and look at our instructions for this sheet. So this site survey will be something that can be sent out to a location, and you can get dimensions back if you don't already have the drawings. So basically we want to get a measurement for each listed dimension, and there's definitely room for having the speakers, in where they need to be, so the accuracy doesn't need to be super precise. So that gives those theater managers a little leeway on giving you dimensions. Then it's also good to provide some photographs so that it helps you visualize the existing conditions in the auditorium. Try and get the auditorium brightly lit. If we can get shots from each corner across the room to the opposite corner, and then if we're in the center of the room, kind of get a straight on shot of each wall, and then so that we can get to each, so we can kind of visualize how the speakers are already set up in the room, so that we can take into account any lighting fixtures that kind of place in a rough position on our drawing based on the actual measurements of where the speakers are, which are what is asked for. And then also helpful is if you can get a short video of just panning around the room. That helps you actually place all of the speakers in or all of the pictures in your mind in a 3D place, and reconstruct the auditorium in your mind from never having seen it yourself. So for each surround, please indicate the height. This can be measured from the floor or the ceiling, and then if necessary, provide a sketch or mark up the photos. So if all of that's all put onto our sample drawing here, that'll help describe that back to someone doing a design. So when measuring the depth of the rows, please do so from the center of the auditorium for curved rows. So sometimes those curves get a little strange out to each side. Typically the depth of the last row is different than the depth for the remaining rows. So that one's also called out specifically here. And stair height is not important, only the height between the rows is needed. So, this rise for each row might be, 1.5 feet, and it's got 3 6-inch stairs. Don't need to know how much each step is, because we're looking at where the people are seated. If there's more than one central cross aisle, please note its depth and which rows it's between. So you can see in my little sample I've put a little cross aisle in here, and we'll also want to know how many rows are on each side of it there. If the riser height and depth of the lower rows is typically different from the upper rows, please provide distinct measurements. So we've got those called out again there to be provided. Please provide a height for the stage speaker platform. This can be referenced from the floor or from the bottom of the screen. So the speakers are typically going to sit on a platform behind the screen, and we want to know where that is, because sometimes the distance between the standard row of speakers and our height row up here is going to be less than ideal, and we may want to make a recommendation to move that down so that we get enough angle between our 2 rows of speakers so that there is a discernible difference in where those are. Please provide screen dimensions and describe placement if not centered wall to wall. So back here over on our screen page, basically just want the dimensions of where the screen is. It can be helpful to note which way the masking is in the screen dimensions of the different masking positions as well. But we also want to know how much space is on each side, if it's off center, and then of course how high it is off the ground so that we know what kind of screen we can place in there for getting the angles right. Provide a complete count of all speakers and models. So there's going to be existing speakers in here, and we always want to match the speakers that are existing or recommend replacing all of them. You just get a better overall tone if all of the speakers are matching. Note placement and dimensions of any doorways or hallways. So there could be a door out here or down here closer to the screen. Sometimes there aren't any, and there's just exit rows. So basically we're just asking to make sure we know where any odd features of an auditorium are. Then feel free to add any sketches necessary to describe site conditions. So, for instance, I've done a simple back wall elevation here, and there's a door on one side. It could be a doorway on both sides, or there could be upper auditorium access and doors up here. So it's just good to have some of those dimensions in addition to the speakers. So after all of those instructions, the drawings here already have places to kind of fill in those sort of things. Typically your surrounds are going to be evenly spaced along the wall, so those are probably going to be all the same. But often the rear surround is at a different spacing between it and the back wall, so kind of call that out as a specific. We're looking for how high they are against the wall. Sometimes it'll be easier to measure from the floor to some mounting bracket that's in the center of the speaker, or it may be easier to just measure from the floor to the bottom of the speaker. So we're just looking to understand how it was measured along with what the measurement is. Then we've got the depth of the last row, as we discussed, how much height there is between each row, and then the depth of each of those rows, which generally brings us down to our cross aisle. There's usually a ramp up on one side, so we'll want to know how much space is there for being able to sketch together a room from basically not having drawings. Specific heights and depths of the rows in front of the cross aisle, which are typically a little shallower because you're extra room there to get the sight lines over their heads. And then of course getting that stage speaker height location there as well. Some dimensions on how the screen is. Across the back, we're also going to want to know how high those are off the floor for the existing speakers and their spacing as well. Sometimes spacing will be kind of even across those, but often the back wall construction is least consistent wall, and port windows or secondary ports for pre-show entertainment and whatnot. Sometimes the speaker positions there are complicated, so wanted to give plenty of room there to draw those in, or note that there's additional speakers besides this many for a larger room. Dimensions of the width of the room and things like that. So get that information for the stage screens.